Hello, everyone. Welcome to our BAC families. My name is Cynthia Lane. I'm the founder of Black Autism Coalition. And today is a wonderful day. We have our guest speaker with us, which is Ilyse Levine-Kanji, right?
Yes.
I'm saying this right. And it's such a great pleasure to have you, Ilyse. I know we have met several times, and your smile always brighten up the room, and I'm really excited to have you today. And just wanted to say a little bit because everybody's looking and saying, "Who's Ilyse?" Ilyse is a proud advocate, and she's always advocating for the autism community, not only the autism community, also for prevention of gun violence and public education and also social justice. So I'm not going to say a lot of things about her because I want her to introduce herself, but she writes articles, speaks at public hearings and also events. And her personal experience, that's what bring her here. She has her eldest son who's diagnosed with autism since he was 26 months old, and then she also, as I mentioned, fight for prevention of gun violence because she had three loved ones that she had lost through gun violence. So Ilyse, it's such a pleasure to have us. I know today we're going to be talking about a subject and we call it Blue Envelope 101, right? So a lot of people have heard about the bill that had passed, which is the Blue Envelope bill. So every parent that have ever dreamed of the kids, one day driving their kids on the spectrum, that have been nervous, right? We know that you are a huge force towards this bill. So we have a Blue Envelope 101 for everybody today. So such a pleasure to have you. I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. And I was so excited and honored when you asked me to present today. I follow your work from afar and we overlap in so many areas. And I'm just so impressed and so appreciative of all the good work you do. So thank you so much for having me. As Cynthia said, my name is Ilyse Levine-Kanji, and I have a 28-year-old son with autism whose name is Sam, and he drives. I'm sure we'll talk about his journey in learning to drive later on. But if you met Sam, you would be very shocked to know that he can drive. He has kind of a speech impediment. His speech is garbled. And I think that people frequently underestimate the abilities of somebody who has difficulty communicating, and obviously underestimates people with autism in general. So I'm with an organization called Advocates for Autism of Massachusetts, which is a statewide grassroots advocacy organization. We go by the acronym AFAM. And so I've been very involved in advocacy, as you said, Cynthia. But in 2021, I heard about the bill. Now I'm jumping ahead into what my role with the blue envelope was. But so in 2021, this bill was introduced in Massachusetts. And the second that I heard about the bill, I thought, this is absolutely what my family needs and what would be so helpful in Massachusetts. So I testified at a hearing about the bill, and there was broad support for the bill, but there just was in the legislature liked the bill, but we just needed people to come up and say why the bill was important. And I think that's the thing with advocacy. It makes people feel good because it makes you feel like you're doing something and trying to help move the ball forward. But it also is just such an important part of the legislative process because the legislators have so many bills in front of them. Yes. And they really just need parents to come up and tell your story and let them know, hey, this is a priority for people in our community.
I know you talked a little bit about your son, Sam, and he's driving. And I know a lot of parents are wondering the same thing too. my son, my daughter, would they be able to drive? And as you mentioned about the bill, and it wasn't even just about thinking, would they be able to drive? As a parent, as an advocate, even if I don't see it for my child, how can I get, other parents, behind me to rally up this bill? And, you talked about, hearing about it. You didn't just keep it for yourself, but you went out there and testify. And this is one of the things that we always tell parents all the time within our community. Our voice is very powerful. And the more that we go and we raise our voices and let people know about our story, the better that we can do. So we thank you because, like I said, you are a huge force behind not only yourself but AFAM community and also the ARC. I know play a huge role towards making sure this bill pass. So let's talk about the Blue Envelope program. I know you jumped up a little bit, right? Why was the Blue Envelope created? Like, what was the reason behind it? I know you heard about the bill, but people are wondering, like, why was this bill created?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you know what else I want to say before we get started?
Mhm.
The thing about the blue envelope, and we'll talk in detail about it is definitely geared towards drivers who have autism,
Mhm.
but really it can be used in so many situations. So passengers with autism, family members say that, that they're worried that they'll get pulled over and that they'll have a non-speaking child in the back seat who is having a tantrum or is having a meltdown, is having behavioral issues, and that a law enforcement officer can have the wrong idea about what's happening in the car, and that so having a blue envelope, handing it to the police officer and saying, this is for my child in the back seat, it can be my adult child in the back seat who's having a hard time, just so that you understand what the behavior is. And so the blue, and it's also even for community members. So people walking in the street and, law enforcement can have the wrong idea when somebody's having unexpected behavior. And so handing a blue envelope to a law enforcement officer in the street can help the officer say, oh, I didn't realize that person has autism, because so many people with autism, you don't have any physical characteristic that can alert somebody that they have autism. So that's really why the blue envelope is important, regardless of whether you're a driver or not. It's just a simple tool to alert somebody.
I'm glad you said that because, especially myself being a parent of two kids on the spectrum, and when it comes to making sure that law enforcement is aware, we have the stickers in front of our car and the back of the car and the house, but having the envelope and just handing these things really you know, help ease the parents' anxiety, imagine, because, you're getting stopped. And sometimes I have my son Luke. If he's going somewhere, you stop and you didn't tell him you were going to stop. I don't have time to explain, well, the police stopped mommy. Like, let's try to figure things out. But knowing that I can hand a blue envelope really makes sense. And I know there was a parent that had a situation one time while she was working. A child had a behavioral issue, and the police interrogated them for a long time. And I wish they had that blue envelope that they can do it, because they were trying to interrogate a child that was nonverbal. The child couldn't speak back because of that behavior. So this is very important that parents know, because I know a lot of people think, oh, okay, so it's the kids on the spectrum that are driving, but it's not only for that. So thank you so much for explaining. I really appreciate that on your part, because now we can see the whole role of the blue envelope is not just specifically for the kids that are driving. The other thing that I wanted to mention to you is, we talk about the kids on the spectrum. Can people with other disability use it as well?
So anybody, so to request a blue envelope, it's free. We will put the link in the chat. It's also, you can go to mass.gov and search request blue envelope. So it's free, and you do not need to provide proof of your diagnosis. You don't need any kind of doctor's records or anything like that. Anybody can go online. And yes, somebody on social media asked whether that their child was diagnosed with a nonverbal learning disability with autistic tendencies was the diagnosis. And absolutely, they can request a blue envelope. So it's the purpose of a blue envelope is to have a communication tool with police, and also so to promote communication and understanding between police and people with autism, and promote safety, and really to kind of to bridge interactions and to build relationships between police and families. And so it's really anybody who could be helped by law enforcement knowing that they have autism, autistic tendencies. So as long as that's kind of the symptoms that a person has, they should absolutely request, they can choose to request a blue envelope. For someone, if it's a disability, maybe like Down syndrome, without autism, I mean, definitely some people with Down syndrome also have autism, then you certainly request one. But if it's the main reason for the envelope is communication style, and also knowing about sensory overload. So those are the kind of people who I would recommend requesting a blue envelope.
All right. So you talk about, and I know we're gonna put the link in the chat for people that want to request that envelope if you're in Massachusetts. And I know there are other places that have similar. It's not called the blue envelope. I think in Atlanta, there's something else that they have passed over there too, where they'd be able to do the same thing. But in Mass, we will put down the link where you'll be able to request that envelope, just like Ilyse said. And one thing I wanted to ask you about is when they're filling out this paperwork, like describe a little bit about what are we putting in this blue envelope? Is it just a blue envelope we're just handing out to this officer? We'll talk about how the step is into a traffic light, right? Or if something happened or we pull over. But I wanted first, what is the blue envelope? Like what's in there? Like what are we looking forward towards that?
Well, so all excellent questions, and I'm thrilled to have my blue envelope to show off. But so people can put inside the envelope a copy of their driver's license, like a photocopy of the driver's license, and their registration, so that all your documents, when a police officer comes to your car, I have been stopped several times in my past life.
A lot of us.
Exactly. So, you always are a little bit panicked, where are my important documents? So you can keep them in the blue envelope if that's an easier way to organize. And obviously you don't want to keep your actual driver's license in there because you need it going. So you just take
a photocopy, right?
A photocopy. But the other things that are really great about the blue envelope, one of my favorite things is that there is a spot where you can fill out an emergency contact information, so that if somebody gets pulled over, they can request that the officer call their emergency contact information. And then the nice thing is, on both sides of the envelope, on one side, there is instructions to the police officer about, the first one says the driver of this vehicle has autism spectrum disorder. And then it goes through different recommendations to officers about what to do, that you can allow the driver extra time to respond to questions because they may have difficulty processing what you're saying. That, they may have high anxiety. So it gives just brief tips to the officer about what autism actually means. So it's not just alerting them that the driver has autism, but really trying to give some concrete explanation about what that means. And then on the other side of the envelope are tips for drivers. So saying, keep your hands on the steering wheel, that there may be there may be loud noises. The radio might be noisy. There might be a bright flashlight that gets shined on you. And explaining what to expect, that the officer may take your documents and then go back to his or her car for a while, and it might be a longer time sitting there than you expect. Just because we know that people with autism, like all of us,
Yes.
like to know what to expect.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned all these different steps. And one thing that came to my mind as we are speaking is, the training part for these officers, right? I don't want an officer, it's when you stop me, that's when you start reading all these things, right? So there's a training that's be ahead of that. So even us as parents, right? You talked about what's expected, knowing that the officer is going to walk away. So this is something, when we get this envelope as parents, we got to prepare our children in advance. So when they are on that traffic spot, and you mentioned as well to that emergency contact. So imagine, I have a son, you have a son too, they're driving, right? Without us being there, they know the first person to call, mom, dad, or wherever is closest to them that they can call. But it's important, the training aspect of it, both places, the, law enforcement and also the parents. And, a lot of the time we have new cadets, I wonder, how is that training going in the police department, for example? Because like I said, we have new people coming every day. How are they having that training implemented with the new law?
I'm so glad you asked that, Cynthia. Such an important question. So AFAM in the Arc of Massachusetts have had police training bills for several cycles. And so in 2020 or 2021, I think 2020, we were able to get a law passed that says all new recruits, all new cadets have training in autism. So that's great. But what we also have a bill that's unfortunately been filed every session that we still are really, really pushing for. It's a huge priority, is to get veteran officers trained every couple of years. So yes, we want the new recruits to get it, but then we also want that training to happen every couple of years so that it remains fresh in people's minds. And the thing that is wonderful about that is the police want the training too. And so I did a lot of work with this bill, reaching out to police departments, about the blue envelope bill. And they were I was nervous to reach out. I figured police are busy. They have lots of things on their plates. They're not really going to be interested in this bill, because I looked at it as a bill that was only helping people with autism. But they were thrilled because it helps officers. Officers want to do the right thing. Well, they really do. They don't want a misunderstanding to put them on the front page of any newspaper. And they also, most police officers are also kind, good-hearted people. They want to help.
Yeah, and some of them are parents as well too, with kids on the spectrum.
Absolutely, bingo. And so they were so open to putting the blue envelope program out, but they're also really, really open to training, because they don't want to do the wrong thing. They want to do the right thing. They want to understand what autism is, and how to best interact with people who have autism and make things go smoothly. So even though our bill has been stalled in trying to get more training, this year, the Mass Chiefs of Police Association mandated training for all officers. So in autism, so they are doing it, but what we want to make, and they're very supportive of our bill. They've signed on to our bill. But so what we want to do is we want to make sure that it's a mandate that every 2 or 3 years there is staff-wide training for all police officers.
Yeah. And the training is very important because I have to say, I've been across social media. I've been seeing a lot of positive videos with interaction with the police, and it brings so much joy within my heart because I have to tell you, as a mom, and I've had experience with that. I'm sure you are well aware that interaction with police, especially myself, I had a negative. I remember, how old was I? I was like in my 20s, and I was waiting for. I worked at Walgreens as a manager, and I had to pick up my mom at the airport. And when I was picking up my mom at the airport, and I closed the store, and I said, instead of driving an hour back home and coming to pick her up, let me just snooze off a little bit and then pick her up. And someone called, and the next thing I had guns like in my head, and I'm shaking, and they're asking me for my ID, and I'm like, should I go left? Should I go right? So that had brought a bad experience in my life. And whenever I hear the police, that kind of like bring that flashback memory. I've had police being called for my son. So you have all these different things, and, we don't want to stay into the negative. However, we want to make sure we're pushing for those trainings, as you mentioned. And I've been seeing a lot of videos that bring a lot of joy. Like I said, I saw a last interaction with the police with a child that was having some behavioral issues, and they already had the sensory bag available and all these different things. And that's what we need. You never know. Even if it's a stop, yeah, we got the blue envelope. You don't know if that child would need some sensory items with them or need a minute to kind of calm down. So it's very important that we keep pushing this kind of like the training. And as I mentioned to you, sometimes it helps because we have officers that have their kids diagnosed. And when we see that within the department, we see there's a huge push towards that. And I know the work is not done yet, but us as parents and advocates within the community, we're gonna keep pushing because we want the kids to feel comfortable, right? They shouldn't be scared just being stopped. And we all make errors, myself, right? Sometimes we might run a red light without realizing it. We get that stuff. But because, we have that talk, sometimes the officers talk, we shouldn't be scared about that. And it's the same for our children that is wanting to drive or learning to drive. So that's very important that we keep pushing. So one thing like I wanted to talk a little bit about, have you heard any success stories? I know you probably have used your blue envelope, right, with Sam. Tell us a little bit about the success behind it.
Well, to tell you the truth, so I haven't been able to find success stories. I haven't heard stories about being presented. And so Connecticut was the first state to pass the law. So what my job in all of this was, Maura Sullivan from who's now the executive director of the ARC, but at that time was government affairs. She asked me, would I spearhead trying to get advocacy just to get attention to the bill. So I reached out to law enforcement in Connecticut to find out what their experience had been. And then eventually Massachusetts police and lots of advocates, including you, Cynthia. We appreciated you submitting testimony on this bill since it was something, near and dear to your heart also, and sharing your story. But so people haven't really, we haven't found stories of it being used in a traffic stop, but it's partially because police departments haven't been recording. They don't have they're not recording every stop. Oh, and during this stop, a blue envelope was
I'm
used.
sure if there was something negative, we would know, right?
That's true too. That's definitely true.
Yeah.
But so there just really hasn't been data collected. So I've called a whole bunch of police departments, but I haven't really found anybody.
Yeah. Like I said, the bill is new here, and I know a lot of the police stations are learning or getting trained about it and stuff. And like I said, if it was something wrong, definitely someone would be like, "I got my blue envelope. This is what happened to my child," But and then I think it's something that we look forward to hear more ahead. And then too, there's a lot of parents that's still not aware of the blue envelope bill, and that's why we are having this conversation, to making sure they know. You just mentioned that even if you have a child in the back, you can request that so you can hand it out. Some parents didn't know about that. They're going to learn that today, or if you're walking on the street, that you have it with you. So those things are very important. And then I think these gonna bring more story, and we call everybody too. If you have a great experience, share it. If you have a bad experience, we want to hear it as well too, because we want to know how can we make this better for families that are using the blue envelope. So I wanted
Absolutely. You know what, I'll say one thing. So my son's speech therapist, I told her recently how, the law had passed, and she said, it's so great that she had a client who, yes, has a speech delay. Is an adult, but still has, his speech is difficult to understand. And he was off kind of on the side of a road fixing his shoe. And police thought that looked suspicious and went over to see what he was doing. And like my son, Sam, he has just very garbled speech. So the officer thought he was drunk or high, put him in handcuffs and took him to the police station. And at the police station, they tested him for alcohol, no alcohol in his blood. And so then, they let him go. But having a blue envelope, that's really, for me, for my son, Sam, I'm sure that somebody would think he's drunk, especially when he gets anxious. If a police officer stopped him, they would just think he was drunk. So all that the blue envelope does is say, hey, this person has autism. They may have a speech impairment. And so it just puts a little light bulb on in the police officer's head that, yeah, most people who you pull over, if they have really garbled speech, they are probably drunk or high. But this person has autism and may have a physical, a disability, or, may have a speech disorder. So that's why it's just such a cheap, totally inexpensive, and just so impactful program in law.
Yeah. And just hearing the story is just like, as a mom, it breaks my heart, because imagine your child just tying their shoe and end up being in, police station. And I know the blue envelope is a great way to communicate that, but that's why we forcing on police training, because these cues should have been taken right away, right? A child with autism compared to somebody who's drunk, that's too, you can smell liquor, for example. So all these different things is very important that our law enforcement knows about, kids that are on the spectrum. Yes, some of them don't physically appear it. However, there are some cues that they need to get right away before this, adult or this child end up being in places that they're not So thank you for sharing this story, and we hope every law officers that is hearing that, they take into accountability. And when we're talking about training, we're not talking about only police officers that need to be training everywhere in healthcare, in banking. My son not too long ago went to get his account, and it was very nice to have a young lady sitting down, not only talking to me, but also addressing him, addressing his needs, what he wants for his future. Not saying, okay, he's on the spectrum, mom needs to answer everything. So every place needs training so we can accommodate not only to the individual but to their family as a whole. So thank you for sharing that story. And one thing I wanted to address today as well too, what advice would you give to parents preparing, I know your son, we had a little bit of this story about driving, preparing, like in, I know earlier we were speaking and I was telling you about my fear and you had bring so much hope, right? Like I said, Ryan, which is my eldest, who's 16 now, he said, Mom, by the time I'm a senior, I want to have my car, I want to drive to the high school. And I'm like, ah. So what advice would you want to give to parents that want their children to drive?
Yeah, well, another great question, and I did like our talk about it. But so my son Sam, same thing. He was about to turn 16, and he sees all of his other friends, starting to take driver's lessons, and he wanted to do it. And I thought, this kid is never going to drive. And I'm not sure, I want him to drive. He's my little boy. I want him, why would he want to? I'd like to just drive him everywhere.
Would be the personal driver.
Exactly. But so I just kind of took it step by step. Okay, dude, if you want to try driving, we can try. And so I'm a very hands-on mom, a little too much hands-on, but so I just decided that, that we would study together, also kind of through school. I was definitely helping him learn his other subjects. And so we studied a lot of the drivers, the written test. And he, got his permit. And then I took him out and we just started baby steps, so we would spend, a half hour every, on the weekends driving around parking lots. We have an empty building near our house, and we just would drive around the parking lot and we practice, stopping, whatever. But so it was, so it was very, very slow going. And then we finally moved to, going onto very small streets and then going when there was no traffic out. And so he kept progressing. And I have to say, both with driving and just life in general, like Sam has just continued to amaze us in how his growth continues. When he was in high school, he is 28, so I guess that was 10 years ago, but the amount of growth that he made from the time he was in high school to now is just unbelievable to me. And he continues to grow. So my husband and I are just amazed at his continued growth. And it's anything would have been fine wherever he ended up. But it's beautiful. So his growth is slower than his peers. He will never be like his typical peers, who are really are doing great. But he's doing great where he is. He's happy. And, I think it's important for parents of younger children to know that our guys will continue to grow, just at a slower pace sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And just hearing your story, what I'm hearing, Ilyse, is when your child tell you they want to do something, don't tell them they can't do it, right? That was the first thing. And I didn't hear in your story when he said, I want to drive, where you said, no, I don't think you're capable of driving, right? You find a way to let him drive, right? Because a lot of the time, especially, we have in our community, the Haitian community, we tend to protect our kids. If I have my child and say that you cannot do this, that's a way for me to protect you from no harm. And I know a lot of the parents, they don't mean that they don't want the child to grow independently. However, it's important. If they said they can do it, they can do it. Um, just the same way I remember when my son he said, Mom, I want to play basketball. And I remember with the basketball, the first time he was bumping here, bumping there, and he got it now. Like, he's playing with his peers, he's playing at a higher level. And all that is because I did it. I said, hey, you want to do it? You're going to do it. Mom, I want to run. So every single time now he says the same way with Sam, like, I want to drive. By senior year, I want my car. Grandma already have money ready for him. He's like, Grandma, give me money. So I need to get my car. So it's very important we believe into our kids. We are the biggest cheerleaders. We cannot just each time feeding it into the you can't, because even though your son might not have all the language, the minute that you start putting that negativity into their head, they start believing in it because outside world is already telling them they can't. The therapist, if we go back, Ilyse, from the time we get the diagnosis, how many things they told us our kids would not be able to do, right? My Ryan was never to speak. Now he can't. He's telling me things. I'm like, hey, listen, you don't control yourself, right? But it's very important that we believe in them. We believe into their abilities. Like you said, their growth might be different from their peers. However, they're growing. If we are looking from the time that we learn about the diagnosis and now, we can say God has been great to them. So they got to continue to live their life and we got to keep pushing that independence. And, the huge fear that I have in my life is, what happened if I'm no longer there? If we talk about driving, if we're no longer there, an incident happen at any time, we want to grow till we can grow no more or live until we can, if we can be forever, be
Absolutely.
good, but we will be older, right? So if we are older, are we going to be able to drive at 80, 90 years old, right? So if we don't push that independence and push that belief in them, they're not going to be able, to live the life that they are. So I'm sorry, I know you were going to say something.
No, well, no, I completely agree with all of what you said. So, and also, if Sam had never progressed from driving in the parking lot, when the empty parking lot, that would have been fine. If he wasn't able to do that, if he wasn't able to drive on a street, that would have been fine. But I'm glad that I gave him that opportunity, and it was something that he enjoyed and that he felt good about. But as you say, so now that he's 28, he lives independently, and for a long time he didn't have a car down in Plymouth, which is where he's living, and so he was taking a van. Anyway, he said, I want a car, and it was so hard for us to agree to give it to him because I was so nervous, that he could get hurt. But he is such a good driver because I think people with autism like to follow rules.
They do. Yes, they do.
So, he gets into the car, he puts his phone immediately on do not disturb. He checks his mirrors, he turns off his radio. He is on the road, he is concentrating. He's not talking on the phone like neurotypical people are.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And he's so good at making sure he gets out of the house on time. He leaves himself plenty of time to get to where he's going, so he's not speeding. He's amazing at directions. His mind is a map. He will never, sometimes I'll be kind of daydreaming and then he'll be like, the exit, don't miss the exit, Mom. And then, I'm like, doing a million things. And he will never do that. He is a really good, safe driver. Obviously there are other people on the road, and, he may get in an accident, but and the main thing is, driving makes him feel so independent and so proud of himself. And it's given him so much self-confidence driving, that I feel like that is why he keeps growing, is because he has that feeling of accomplishment and self-confidence, that he knows, and his friends look up to him that he can drive, or people who meet him look up to him that he can drive, because they, it's not a given. And so I think it all just does build on him becoming more independent, and which is exactly what you're saying, that we're not going to be here forever, and this is what makes him successful.
Absolutely. And again, thank you for sharing. I'm like smiling because I could see the joy, in your eyes, and just speaking about it. And when our kids are feeling confident, when they feel like, hey, I'm able to do something as mom, we feel like, hey, we made it happen. We made it happen. And we didn't just do it like that. We know the road that it had taken and stuff, and we wish Sam all the best. One day, now you have a personal driver.
Exactly.
Personal driver, right? So that's amazing. And hearing him try to direct you when you get distracted, hey, don't forget the exit. And that even happens to me with Ryan sometimes, and he's like, Mom, where are you going? And I'm like, oh Lord. Thank God that he's there to kind of like direct. And like you said, one of the things about our kids, they are rule followers, right? And that's what's great when it comes to driving for them. And that's why parents shouldn't be scared, because like they will put their phone away and not touching it, because they know this is what's going to happen. And they'll even remind you, when I was taking my permit, one of the questions on the test is not to pick up your phone, right? Not to take a yellow light, because the red light is coming right after that. So they are learning, and they are applying everything. So it's us parents just getting the right resources and the right support. So the other question I was going to ask you is, to bring more awareness to the blue envelope, right? Because we want to make sure the community in Massachusetts are well aware of it. How can, organization, community leaders, the school too, for example, we want them to be part of it, because this is where the kids are going to school, right? So they're already in IEP meetings knowing that child want to drive. So how can we bring that awareness? So, if a parent didn't hear from different organization, but they'll hear it in an IEP meeting.
Excuse me. Yeah, another really good question. Well, I think it's sharing with your network. If people are part of their parent advisory committee, so it's the CPAC. Mm-hmm. Each school district is required to have a special education parent advisory committee, or a CPAC. And if people aren't already looped in connected to their CPAC, I think it's such a great tool, because you learn from the parents whose kids are older than you, that which teachers are good, what classes are we're challenging, we're rewarding, and it's a way to have the CPAC interacts with the administration. Mm-hmm. So you find out more about what's happening in schools, like if there's going to be a reorganization, or if there are different programs. But so I would recommend sharing the link about the Blue Envelope program with your CPAC, either on social media or at a meeting, and sending it to the high school, or in your IEP team. So, that helps both your family, and then just to get the word out. Mm-hmm. And I'll put in the link also, the ARC of Massachusetts has put together a full web page about all things about the Blue Envelope, where you can request one, and then just all the details about the Blue Envelope, which is just an easy link to share with a CPAC or your school community. And then also reaching out to your local police department. I think you and I are both big believers in making connections to the police department. And, I know that it's nerve-wracking going into a police department. I mean, I don't like doing it, even when I'm going to talk about something like the Blue Envelope. I think it's unpleasant seeing people in uniforms. I don't know. It's, you can just feel nervous about it. But I think the majority of police officers really are good, kind people who went into policing to try and help their community, and are open to hearing from all families. And I think that making that connection is so important. Actually, so my son Sam loves asking people when their birthday is. So immediately he meets somebody and
he can tell you happy birthday on your birthday.
Exactly. Once he has it, he's in there. It's in there forever. He likes telling you what famous person has your birthday. But so he loves people in uniform. So we had a town block party, and he went running over to police officers, found out their names and birthdays. And then a couple months later, he also loves elevators. So he drove over to a building to go in the elevator up and down and come back home. And I wasn't home. My husband and I were both out, and police officer comes to our door, and Sam opens the door. And what happened was an employee in the building said, "Hey, there's this kid or young man who keeps coming, stays in our building for like 2 minutes and leaves. We think he's here stealing things." And so they called the police, and I guess they had taken a picture of our car. Okay. So the police, the license plate, exactly. And so the cop who showed up knew it was probably Sam's house or whatever. That maybe they had video. They also had video of Sam, so they thought that they had recognized Sam. So the good thing was, the police officer who showed up was somebody who Sam had met at the block party just a couple weeks beforehand.
For your birthday. You can't remember.
Found out his birthday. Yep. And so he knew when he came to our house that Sam had autism. And, he asked Sam, "Well, what were you doing in the building?" And Sam said, "I went there to ride the elevator." And it was just such a much easier conversation because the officer knew
who he
was before he rang the doorbell. And especially it was, upsetting to us because it's rare that he was still in high school. So it was rare that he and his brother were home by themselves without me and my husband. But it went well.
Thank God.
Yes.
Yep.
But also, I think it's a reason why it's so good to make those interactions. Also, police have, these events all the time, like, safe seats or, checking car seats or whatever. So go to an event where your local police are and just introduce yourself, introduce your family.
Yeah, make the connection. And I know we always tell our families it's important, no matter what age your child is, that you go to the police station and introduce yourself, letting them know about the diagnosis. A lot of paperwork sometimes you can fill out every year, making sure they have a brand new picture of your child as well too. That, in case if your child elopes, especially the kids that are eloping, making sure they have all the right information. And I know some police station, they have like a red flag they can put into your house, so right away that they can know, hey, this is a house with a red flag, there's a child on the spectrum there. So that's, those things are very, very important. And we shouldn't feel intimidated by the police, because we're not doing anything wrong. We're protecting our children and stuff. And any parents, if at any time you felt that you were not welcome, you have your way of ask for higher, whoever's hired to speak with them, because you shouldn't be not welcome to talk about your child condition or trying to protect your child or get the information that you need. So we don't want parents to feel intimidated at all. And as you mentioned, just mentioning, do you know about the blue envelope, right? Or, and I think every department to have a community person that do stuff within the community. So those are the people that you want to be connected with, because sometimes, like, other officers will be out doing different dispatching. But if you the person that does community engagement, if you get in touch with them, usually they're the best person to spread out this information and to kind of like guide you and stuff. So I know we had a great conversation today, and it can go so long, but I just want to thank you, Ilyse, for coming, and also, taking the time to share your story about the blue envelope. And I know we're gonna prepare for a Haitian Creole version of this, because we want to make sure our community, the Haitian community, are well aware of the blue envelope as well, to where they can understand it in their own language. But we want it as well too, everybody that speak English, they're able to hear about the blue envelope. I know you said you'll share in the comment, the link, and parents, you can request, you have all the information, you can read it up. If you have any question, you can go to the AFAM, the ARC website. You're able to connect with someone. Everybody is here to help you. And we are parents just like yourself, with children on the spectrum. That's the beauty of it. You're not getting somebody that's just doing their job, but somebody that's have lived experience. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. And I know this is not going to be our last meeting. We're going to keep educating. We're going to keep, spreading awareness about the blue envelope, not only the blue envelope, but a lot of the work that AFAM is also doing within the community. And we're going to keep pushing those bills. And we ask everybody, make sure that the ARC alerts that you are part of it, and it sends you an email every time there's a bill coming. You can send it to your senator or representative so they can support these bills. Because when you do these things, this is what happened. A new envelope bill get passed, and then our children get the bill that can protect themselves. And then when we get older, we can say, hey, we don't have that much worried anymore. So we encourage parents, if you are thinking about your child driving, talk to them, see how they feel about it. Make sure that it's something that they want, not force anything that they don't want, and as Lee said, take your time with them when you're doing the driving. Sometimes it's just like everything else, the dishes, the cleaning, it took a little bit of while, and then after that, it's to perfection. It's going to be the same way. Don't rush anything in. I don't know if you have anything last minute that you would like to say, Ilyse.
No, just thank you so much for inviting me and for having this important discussion, and for all your good work. And thanks everybody for listening.
All right. Thank you as well. Have a wonderful day.